The Great Hall of the Galactic Confederation buzzed with quiet conversations. Representatives from 1,000 worlds sat in their assigned seats, discussing trade routes and scientific discoveries. It was just another peaceful day in what had become the longest period of peace in galactic history. 6,000 years had passed since the last real war. 6,000 years of prosperity, growth, and cooperation between the stars. The younger species barely remembered what conflict looked like. Even the older, more warlike races had grown soft around the edges. Admiral Kethzar, of the Kethvar Empire, shifted uncomfortably in his ceremonial armor. The metal felt heavy and strange after years of wearing it only for formal occasions. Around him, other Kethvar officers looked equally restless. Their people were born warriors, bred for battle across countless generations. But what was a warrior without a war? This cannot continue. Kethzar muttered to his aide, Commander Veltar. Our young ones spend their days studying art and philosophy. Instead of learning to fight, they write poetry about distant stars instead of planning battles. Veltar nodded grimly. The warrior spirit dies a little more each day, Admiral. Some of our recruits have never even held a real weapon. Across the hall, the human representative was discussing something called a cultural exchange program with the Altarian delegate, Dr. Sarah Chen smiled warmly as she showed holographic images of human art galleries and music festivals. The Altarians seemed fascinated by human paintings and sculptures. Kethzar watched with growing disgust. Humans had been part of the Confederation for the entire 6,000 years of peace. In all that time, they had never once raised their voice in anger, never threatened anyone, never even argued very loudly during debates. They spent their time exploring empty space, studying dead rocks, and creating what they called art. Look at them, Kethzar said, pointing toward the human section. 6,000 years of peace, and what do they have to show for it? Pretty pictures and nice songs. The Kethvar had done their research on humanity. The humans had no real military to speak of. Their ships were designed for exploration and science. Their colonies focused on farming and research. They had never built weapons of mass destruction, never conquered other species, never even raised an army larger than what was needed to maintain order in their own space. They are weak, Veltar agreed, soft from too much comfort. As the session continued, Kethzar found himself studying the humans more carefully. There were only 12 human representatives in the entire Confederation Council, 12 people to represent hundreds of human worlds and billions of human citizens. And they were all scientists, teachers, and diplomats. Not a single soldier among them. Dr. Chen was explaining how humans had helped terraform 17 dead worlds in the past century, turning barren rocks into gardens. She spoke about it like it was no big deal, just another day at work. The other species listened with polite interest, but Kethzar saw something else entirely. If humans could reshape entire planets for fun, what else might they be capable of? But then he watched Dr. Chen laugh at something the Altarian delegate said, saw how she offered to share human terraforming technology freely with anyone who wanted it, and his suspicions faded. No warrior would give away such powerful tools so casually. That evening, Kethzar met with the other Kethvar leaders in their private chambers. The room was decorated with weapons from their homeworld and battle honors from wars fought long ago, but the weapons were dusty, and the battle honors felt like ancient history. We need a war, announced General Thekmar bluntly. Our people are forgetting who they are. The Council will never approve an unprovoked attack, said Admiral Rektar. Not after 6,000 years of peace. Then we don't make it unprovoked, Kethzar said slowly. We find someone who deserves to be taught a lesson. The room fell silent as the Kethvar leaders considered this. They needed a target that would satisfy their need for battle without causing real political problems. Someone weak enough that the war would be quick and educational, but important enough that it would matter. The humans, whispered Commander Veltar. Every eye in the room turned to him. He stood straighter, encouraged by their attention. Think about it, he continued. They're perfect. They have hundreds of worlds, so it looks like a real war. But they have no military, no weapons, no fighting spirit. We could defeat them quickly. Remind them of their place in the galaxy. and satisfy our need for battle, all at the same time. General Thekmar stroked his chin thoughtfully. The other species wouldn't object too strongly. Humans are well liked, but they're not feared, and they're so peaceful that many species think they need to learn about the realities of galactic politics anyway. We could frame it as a limited conflict, Kethzar added, warming to the idea. Not a war of conquest, but a war of education. Show the humans that their soft lifestyle has made them vulnerable. Teach them that they need to be stronger. The more they talked, the better the idea sounded. The humans had grown too comfortable, too secure in their peaceful little corner of the galaxy. They needed to be reminded that the universe could be dangerous, and the Kethvar needed to remember what it felt like to be warriors. Within a week, the Kethvar had prepared their case for the Confederation Council. They argued that humanity had become a security risk through their very weakness. How could the Confederation protect species that refused to protect themselves? What would happen if a real threat emerged and found humans so completely unprepared? The debate lasted for days. Some species argued against any military action. Others worried about setting a precedent. But in the end, the Kethvar's arguments found support among species who had their own concerns about human naivety. The vote was close, but the Kethvar won permission for what they called a corrective military exercise. They would be allowed to attack human space for a limited time, with specific rules about avoiding civilian casualties and minimizing damage to infrastructure. Dr. Sarah Chen sat in stunned silence as the vote was announced. She looked around the chamber at delegates who had been her friends for years, people who had laughed at human jokes and marveled at human art. Now they were voting to let the Kethvar attack her people. "We don't understand," she said quietly when given a chance to respond. "What have we done wrong?" Admiral Kethzar stood to address her directly. "You have done nothing wrong, Dr. Chen. That is exactly the problem. Your people have forgotten that the universe is dangerous. We will remind you." The formal declaration of war was broadcast across all human space 3 days later. The message was simple and direct. The Kethvar Empire, acting with Confederation approval, was implementing military operations against human space. Human forces were advised to surrender quickly to minimize casualties. The Kethvar expected panic. They expected desperate diplomatic appeals, frantic military preparations, maybe even immediate surrender from some of the smaller human colonies. Instead, the response from human space was a polite acknowledgement of the message and a request for clarification about something called traffic control procedures during the exercise. The war had begun. But as Admiral Kethzar would soon learn, only one side understood what they had actually started. Admiral Kethzar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Times Bloodclaw Asterisk, watching the human colony of New Geneva grow larger on the main screen. His fleet of 30 warships had traveled for 2 weeks to reach this outer human settlement. Intelligence reports said it was a mining colony with about 50,000 civilians and no military presence. Perfect, Kethzar thought. An easy first target to demonstrate Kethvar power. But something felt wrong as they approached. The colony's space traffic was moving normally. Cargo ships flew back and forth from the asteroid fields. Construction vessels worked on what looked like a new orbital platform. Nobody seemed to notice or care that a Kethvar war fleet was approaching. "Admiral," called out Sensor Officer Mektar, "I'm detecting no defensive preparations, no shields being raised, no weapons being powered up, no evacuation procedures." Kethzar frowned. Even the weakest species usually showed some reaction when warships appeared. Fear, panic, desperate attempts to negotiate. Something, but the humans were acting like the Kethvar fleet was just another group of traitors. "Send them the standard surrender demand," Kethzar ordered. "Communications." Officer Tekvar worked at his station for a moment, then looked up with confusion. "Sir, they're responding. But I don't think they understand what we want." "Put it on screen." The main display showed a friendly-looking human woman in work clothes. Behind her, Kethzar could see what looked like a mining operation control center. The woman smiled pleasantly. "Hello there. I'm Station Manager Kim Rodriguez. We got your message about military operations in the area. Just wanted to let you know that we've updated our traffic control system to keep our cargo ships out of your way during your exercises. If you need anything else, just let us know. Oh, and welcome to New Geneva. The communication ended, leaving the Kethvar bridge in stunned silence. Exercises? Veltar whispered. She thinks we're here for exercises? Kethzar's jaw tightened. Send the message again. Make it clearer. This time, Communications Officer Tekvar was very specific about the Kethvar Empire's intention to attack and conquer the human colony. The response came back just as cheerfully confused. Oh, I think there might be some translation error, Manager Rodriguez said. Our computers show you as friendly Confederation members. Are you folks having some kind of technical problem with your identification systems? We can help you run diagnostics if you want. Several Kethvar officers exchanged glances. This was not how wars were supposed to start. Target their mining station, Kethzar growled. A demonstration of force will make our intentions clear. The Times Bloodclaw's Times main guns charged up with a familiar whine. These weapons could punch through standard military ship armor like paper. Against a civilian mining station, they would be devastating. Fire! Brilliant energy beams lanced out across space, striking the human mining station dead center. Kethzar watched with satisfaction, waiting for the explosion, the debris field, the screams of panic from the human colony. Instead, the energy beams seemed to splash harmlessly against the station's hull. Where there should have been a massive hole, there was barely a scorch mark. The station continued operating normally. What? Kethzar stared at the tactical display. Check our weapons systems. Check. All systems normal, Admiral, reported Weapons Officer Gektar. Direct hit with full power. Then how is that station still intact? Before anyone could answer, another communication came from the humans. This time it was a different person. A man in engineer's clothing who looked concerned. Hey, are you guys okay out there? He asked. We detected some kind of energy discharge from your ship. Looks like you might have had a weapons malfunction. We've got some pretty good engineers here if you need help with repairs. The Kethvar bridge fell silent again. Weapons malfunction? They had just fired their main guns at full power, and the humans thought it was an accident? Sir, Sensor Officer Mektar said quietly, I'm analyzing the composition of that mining station. The hull material. It's not standard civilian construction. What do you mean? It appears to be designed to withstand asteroid impacts, solar radiation, and extreme temperature variations. The energy absorption capacity is, well, it's about 10 times stronger than our ship's armor. Kethzar felt a cold sensation in his stomach. That's impossible. They're civilians. But as he looked more carefully at the human colony, things started to make a different kind of sense. The mining station wasn't just built to be sturdy. It was built to operate in one of the most hostile environments imaginable. The humans were literally cracking apart asteroids with tools that could probably cut through Kethvar warships. Maybe they just got lucky with that one station, Veltar suggested. Try targeting one of their cargo ships. The Times Bloodclaw Times fired on a human cargo vessel that was hauling refined metals from the asteroid field. Again, the energy beams struck dead center. Again, they seemed to barely scratch the target. The cargo ship didn't even change course. A new communication came in from the cargo ship's pilot, a woman who sounded more annoyed than afraid. Okay, seriously, what's going on with your weapons systems? She said. This is the third time this week someone's had a discharge accident near my ship. You folks really need to get your equipment checked. I'm filing a safety report when I get back to port. Commander Veltar leaned over to Kethzar. Admiral, I think we need to reconsider our approach. But Kethzar was stubborn. The Kethvar Empire had declared war, and they would not be humiliated by a bunch of confused civilians. Bring us closer. Prepare boarding parties. If we can't blast them into surrender, we'll take their stations by force. As the Kethzar fleet moved toward the human colony, more humans started paying attention to them. But not in the way Kethzar expected. Instead of panic or surrender, the humans seemed genuinely worried about the Kethvar ships. Your engine signatures are showing some pretty serious stress patterns, came a message from the colony's traffic controller. Are you sure you don't need assistance? We can send out a repair ship if you want. And your weapons keep misfiring, added another voice. That's really dangerous in an asteroid field. You could hit something important. 1. The more the humans tried to help, the more frustrated Kethzar became. This was supposed to be a war, not a charity rescue mission. When the Kethzar boarding shuttles launched toward the mining station, the humans finally seemed to understand that something unusual was happening. But their response was still not what Kethzar expected. "Oh, you want to come aboard?" Manager Rodriguez said brightly. "Why didn't you just ask? Docking Bay 3 is open for you. Fair warning though, we're in the middle of a shift change, so it might be a little crowded." As the first Kethvar boarding party approached the docking bay, they could see human workers going about their normal routines. Some were operating machinery that looked like it could cut through planets. Others were handling materials that glowed with dangerous radiation, and all of them were doing it like it was the most normal thing in the universe. "Sir," called the boarding party leader over the radio, "I'm not sure what we're boarding into." Kethzar was beginning to understand that this war was not going to go the way he had planned. But he was Kethvar, and Kethvar never retreated from a fight. "Proceed with the mission," he ordered. "Take the station." As the boarding party entered the human docking bay, they were greeted by Manager Rodriguez herself, who was holding what looked like a welcome basket. "Hi there," she said cheerfully. "Welcome to New Geneva Mining Station. I brought coffee and sandwiches. You folks have been flying around out there for hours. You must be tired." The Kethvar boarding party leader stood there in full combat armor, weapon ready, staring at a smiling human woman offering him lunch. War, he decided, was much more confusing than anyone had told him. 3 weeks into what the Kethvar had expected to be a quick war, Admiral Kethzar was ready to break something. Preferably something human. The boarding of New Geneva Mining Station had been a disaster. His warriors, trained for combat and conquest, had spent 6 hours being given a tour of mining equipment by enthusiastic human engineers. Manager Rodriguez had shown them safety procedures, explained ore processing techniques, and even offered them jobs if they ever got tired of military life. When the boarding party leader had finally tried to announce that the station was now under Kethvar control, Rodriguez had looked genuinely confused and asked if that meant they wanted to lease office space. "Sir," reported Commander Veltar from his position at the tactical station, "the reinforcement fleet has arrived." Kethzar looked out at the assembled Kethvar armada. 150 warships, the largest force the Kethvar had assembled in over 1,000 years. Surely this would be enough to make the humans take notice. "Any change in human behavior?" he asked. "No, sir. They're still asking if we need mechanical assistance." The Admiral's teeth ground together. In 3 weeks of warfare, the Kethvar had attacked 12 human colonies, boarded 6 space stations, and attempted to conquer 4 different worlds. The humans' response had been to offer repairs, technical advice, and packed lunches. "Intelligence report, Commander Mektar," Kethzar ordered. Mektar consulted his datapad nervously. "Sir, our understanding of human capabilities may have been incomplete." "Explain." "Well, sir, we assumed their civilian technology was weak because they never used it for military purposes. But after analyzing their equipment more carefully..." Mektar paused. "Sir, their mining lasers are more powerful than our main ship weapons. Their cargo haulers have stronger armor than our cruisers, and their construction equipment appears to be capable of moving small moons." Kethzar felt that cold sensation in his stomach again. "How is that possible?" "It appears, sir, that humans live in extremely dangerous environments as a matter of routine. Their civilian colonies are built on worlds that would kill most species. They regularly work in asteroid fields, near black holes, and on planets with toxic atmospheres. Their everyday survival gear is, well, it's basically military-grade equipment by anyone else's standards." Before Kethzar could respond, Communications Officer Tekvar interrupted. "Admiral, we're receiving a broadcast from Earth. It's different. Show me." The main screen displayed a human man in what looked like some kind of uniform. He wasn't smiling like the other humans they had encountered. His expression was serious, almost concerned. "This is General Chen of the Terran Defense Command," the man said. "We've been monitoring the activities of Kethvar forces in human space for the past 3 weeks. Up until now, we assumed this was some kind of training exercise or cultural exchange program that got lost in translation." General Chen paused, looking directly into the camera with an intensity that made several Kethvar officers shift uncomfortably. "However, yesterday your forces fired on the research station at Kepler 442b. 17 human civilians were killed. This has clarified the situation considerably." Kethzar felt a chill run down his spine. 17 dead? That had been just another failed attack on what they thought was a mining facility. The humans hadn't even seemed to notice. "Since you appear to be operating under the assumption that humanity lacks adequate defensive capabilities," Chen continued, "we are implementing standard safety protocols. All human civilians in the affected areas are being relocated to secure positions. Our emergency response teams are being activated. We ask that you please cease your activities immediately and withdraw to a safe distance while we resolve this situation." The transmission ended, leaving the Kethvar bridge in silence. "Emergency response teams?" Veltar whispered. "They have emergency response teams?" Before anyone could answer, alarms started blaring across the Kethvar fleet. Sensor Officer Mektar's eyes went wide as he studied his displays. "Admiral, something's happening to the human colonies." On the main screen, they watched as the human settlement on Kepler 442b simply vanished. One moment it was there. The next moment the entire colony had been packed up and moved. Massive ships that they had assumed were cargo haulers were lifting entire buildings into space. "How fast are they moving?" Kethzar asked. "Faster than our ships, sir. Much faster." All across the system, the same thing was happening. Human colonies that had seemed fixed and defenseless were revealing themselves to be completely mobile. Space stations unfolded like flowers, revealing hidden engines. Mining platforms detached from asteroids and flew away under their own power. Even the humans' farming operations were apparently designed to be packed up and relocated at a moment's notice. "This doesn't make sense," Veltar said. "Why would civilians need to move their colonies so quickly?" Mektar was studying his sensors frantically. "Sir, I think I understand. Look at this data from their homeworlds." The tactical display showed a map of human space. As Kethzar studied it, he began to see patterns that made his blood run cold. "They build their colonies on worlds that are dying," he said slowly. "Worlds near supernovas, planets with unstable cores, systems with dangerous radiation levels." "Yes, sir. And they move them regularly as conditions change. What we thought were permanent settlements are actually temporary outposts. They're used to packing up and leaving at a moment's notice." That was when the first human ship appeared on their sensors. It looked like a simple exploration vessel, the kind humans used to study distant galaxies. But as it moved closer, Kethzar realized it was the size of a small moon. "Incoming transmission," reported Tekvar. The screen showed a human woman in what looked like a casual jumpsuit. She was sitting in what appeared to be a comfortable chair, drinking from a mug that said, "Galaxy's Best Mom." "Hi there," she said pleasantly. "I'm Captain Martinez, of the exploration vessel Times Curiosity *. We're here to help with the evacuation procedures. Just wanted to let you folks know that you're in a safety zone that's about to be cleared, so you'll need to move your ships." Kethzar found his voice. "This is Admiral Kethzar, of the Kethvar Empire. We are conducting military operations in this system." Captain Martinez looked genuinely surprised. "Oh, you're conducting military operations?" She consulted something off-screen. That wasn't in our briefing. Are you guys the emergency response team from Confederation Command?" "No, we are attacking human space." There was a long pause while Captain Martinez processed this information. When she spoke again, her tone had changed from friendly to concerned. "Oh dear, I think there's been a misunderstanding. You can't attack human space right now. We're implementing emergency protocols because of the civilian casualties. The whole sector is being evacuated." "You cannot evacuate an entire sector," Kethzar protested. Sure we can. We do it all the time. Last month we evacuated the Proxima system when their star started showing signs of instability. The month before that, we moved everyone out of the Tau Ceti region because of that black hole merger. She paused thoughtfully. It's really not that complicated when you've got the right equipment. As if to demonstrate her point, more human ships began appearing on sensors. Ships that dwarfed anything the Kethvar had ever built. Ships that moved with a casual grace that suggested unimaginable power held in careful control. How many ships do you have? Veltar asked quietly. Captain Martinez checked her readouts again. In this sector? Maybe a few thousand. Most of them are just cargo haulers and construction vessels. Though, the real emergency ships are still on their way. A few thousand ships, each one larger than anything in the Kethvar fleet, and she was calling them cargo haulers. Kethzar was beginning to understand that the Kethvar Empire had made a terrible mistake. But it was too late to turn back now. They had declared war, and the entire galaxy was watching. We will not retreat, he announced. The Kethvar Empire does not surrender. Captain Martinez sighed sadly. Well, that's unfortunate. I really hate it when things get complicated. She spoke to someone off-screen. Yeah, we've got a non-compliant situation here. Better call in the professionals. The transmission ended, leaving the Kethvar fleet alone with their growing sense of dread. Somewhere in the distance, more human ships were approaching. And these ones, Kethzar suspected, would not be quite so friendly. Admiral Kethzar had been a warrior for 40 years. He had studied every major battle in galactic history. He had trained with weapons since he could walk. He thought he understood war. He was wrong. The first sign that everything had changed came when the human ships stopped being polite. Admiral, reported Sensor Officer Mektar, his voice tight with fear. The human vessels are moving into attack formation. Kethzar looked at the tactical display and felt his blood freeze. The human ships weren't moving into any attack formation he recognized. Instead, they were spreading out in a pattern that looked almost casual, like they were getting comfortable before starting a difficult task. How many ships are we facing? He asked. I count 3,412 vessels, sir. But... Mektar paused, checking his readings again. Sir, that can't be right. What do you mean? According to sensors, some of those ships are the size of small planets. That's impossible. Before Kethzar could respond, a new communication came in. This time, it wasn't a cheerful civilian or a concerned captain. The human on the screen wore a crisp uniform and had the bearing of someone accustomed to command. This is General Chen of the Terran Defense Command. You are Admiral Kethzar, I assume? I am, Kethzar replied, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. Good. I wanted to speak with you directly before we begin. General Chen's expression was calm, almost sympathetic. I understand there has been some confusion about the nature of this conflict. Your intelligence services appear to have made some significant errors in their assessment of human capabilities. We are not confused, Kethzar said firmly. The Kethvar Empire has declared war on human space. We will not be intimidated. General Chen nodded slowly. I see. In that case, I need to clarify something for you, Admiral. For the past 3 weeks, humanity has been operating under the assumption that this was some kind of misunderstanding, a training exercise gone wrong, perhaps, or a cultural dispute that got out of hand. We've been trying to help you resolve whatever problem brought you here. The general paused, and when he continued, his tone was noticeably colder. However, yesterday, your forces deliberately targeted and destroyed a research facility, killing 17 civilians. This action has clarified your intentions. You are not here by mistake. You are here to wage war against humanity. Kethzar felt a chill at the change in the general's demeanor. Yes, that is correct. Then let me explain what happens next, General Chen said. What you've been fighting for the past 3 weeks was not the human military. It was our civilian emergency response system. Traffic controllers, mining engineers, and colony administrators were doing their best to help what they thought were confused visitors. The general leaned forward slightly. You are about to discover what happens when humanity actually fights back. The transmission ended. For a moment, the Kethvar bridge was silent, except for the hum of ship systems. Then alarms started blaring as the human fleet began to move. "They're accelerating," Mektar reported, his voice cracking. "All ships, simultaneous acceleration. Rate of approach is..." "That can't be right." "Report," Kethzar barked. "Sir, they're moving faster than anything that size should be able to move. Those massive ships are pulling maneuvers that would tear our vessels apart." On the main screen, the human fleet was indeed moving in ways that defied everything Kethzar knew about space combat. Ships the size of asteroids were turning and pivoting like fighters. Vessels that should have needed hours to change course were moving like they were dancing. "Weapons range in 30 seconds, reported Weapons Officer Gektar. "Should we open fire?" Before Kethzar could answer, the humans attacked. It wasn't like any attack the Kethvar had ever seen. There was no dramatic exchange of weapons fire. No spectacular explosions. No heroic last stands. The human ships simply acted. Beams of energy that made Kethvar weapons look like flashlights reached across space and touched the Kethvar vessels. Where they touched, armor plating didn't explode or burn. It simply ceased to exist. Entire sections of Kethvar ships were carved away with surgical precision. "Shields," Kethzar shouted. "Shields are gone, sir," Gektar reported. "They cut right through them like they weren't there." But the humans weren't trying to destroy the Kethvar fleet. As Kethzar watched in growing horror, he realized they were disabling it. Weapons systems were being surgically removed. Engine compartments were being carefully carved out. Life support systems were being left intact. "They're not trying to kill us," Beltar whispered. "They're taking us apart." One by one, the Kethvar warships went dark as their systems were systematically disabled, but the crews were unharmed. Emergency life support kicked in automatically, keeping everyone alive while their ships became floating hulks. The entire engagement lasted 6 minutes. When it was over, the Kethvar fleet was completely disabled but intact. Every ship could still support life, but none of them could fight or flee. They were trapped, helpless, waiting to see what the humans would do next. The answer came in the form of another transmission from General Chen. "Admiral Kethzar, your fleet has been neutralized. Your crews are unharmed, and we're transmitting life support specifications to ensure their safety. Rescue ships will arrive within the hour to provide medical assistance and emergency supplies." Kethzar could only stare at the screen. "You're helping us?" "Of course. Your crews didn't choose this war, Admiral. Many of them are probably just following orders. We don't punish people for poor leadership decisions made by their superiors." The general's expression softened slightly. "This is what I wanted you to understand, Admiral. Humanity doesn't wage war the way you do. We don't fight to prove our strength or to dominate others. When we fight, it's to solve a problem as quickly and efficiently as possible." "But how?" Kethzar asked. "How did you defeat our entire fleet so easily?" General Chen seemed to consider the question carefully. "Admiral, humanity has been exploring space for thousands of years. We've built colonies in the hearts of dying stars, established research stations near black holes, and created settlements on worlds that would kill most species in minutes. Our everyday technology is designed to handle problems that would be considered impossible by most civilizations." The general gestured to something off-screen. "The ships that just disabled your fleet? They're not warships, Admiral. They're construction vessels, search and rescue craft, and deep space exploration ships. We retrofitted them with what we call problem-solving equipment when we realized this was an actual war and not just a misunderstanding." Kethzar felt the last of his warrior's pride crumble. "Your civilian ships defeated our entire battle fleet?" "I'm afraid so. But don't feel bad about it, Admiral. Your ships were never designed to operate in the kinds of environments our vessels handle routinely. It's not a failure of courage or tactics. It's just a difference in engineering requirements." As if to prove the point, human ships were already moving among the disabled Kethvar vessels. But instead of boarding parties or weapons, they were deploying repair drones and emergency supply pods. "What happens now?" Kethzar asked. Now we make sure your people are safe and comfortable, while we figure out how to get everyone home safely. This war is over. Admiral, it was over before it really began. This war, it's not rounding. In mager honor sound, General Chen paused for a moment, then continued with something that might have been sympathy. Admiral, humanity doesn't have enemies. We have problems that need to be solved. Right now, the problem is that several thousand Kethvar personnel are stranded in space far from home with damaged ships. So we're going to solve that problem. The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Kethzar alone with the reality of what had just happened. The greatest military force the Kethvar Empire had assembled in 1,000 years had been defeated in 6 minutes by what the humans considered civilian contractors. And now those same humans were risking their own safety to make sure the Kethvar crews were comfortable. Kethzar leaned back in his command chair and wondered if maybe, just maybe, the Kethvar Empire had learned the wrong lessons about strength. 6 days. Admiral Kethzar sat in the comfortable chair that the humans had provided and stared at that number on the datapad in his hands. The greatest military campaign in Kethvar history had lasted exactly 6 days, from declaration of war to complete defeat. Actually, he corrected himself, it had been 6 minutes of actual fighting. The rest had been the humans trying to figure out what the Kethvar wanted, and then carefully taking care of several thousand stranded enemy personnel. The rescue ship times compassion times was nothing like Kethzar had expected. When General Chen had said rescue ships were coming, the Admiral had imagined prison barges or military transports. Instead, the humans had sent what appeared to be a mobile city designed specifically for emergency humanitarian aid. The ship's captain was Dr. Elena Vasquez, a middle-aged woman who treated the defeated Kethvar forces like they were disaster victims, rather than conquered enemies. She had greeted Kethzar personally when he came aboard, apologized for the cramped accommodations, and asked if there were any dietary restrictions she should know about when planning meals. "I don't understand you people," Kethzar had told her. Dr. Vasquez had smiled sadly. "I know. We get that a lot." Now, a week later, Kethzar was beginning to understand just how little he had known about humanity. The rescue ship was carrying not just the Kethvar survivors, but a complete team of human engineers who were working around the clock to repair the damaged Kethvar vessels. "They're not just fixing our ships," Commander Veltar had reported in amazement. "They're upgrading them. Better life support, more efficient engines, improved safety systems. They say our original designs were a bit primitive, but we can work with that." Through the viewport of his temporary quarters, Kethzar could see human work crews swarming over the Kethvar flagship times, Bloodclaw **. They moved with the casual confidence of people who regularly performed much more difficult tasks. Welding repairs in open space while dodging asteroid debris was apparently just another day at work for them. A soft chime announced an incoming communication. The wall screen lit up to show Dr. Chen from the Human Diplomatic Corps, not General Chen, Kethzar had learned, but his sister Sarah, the same woman who had been representing humanity at the Galactic Confederation for years. "Admiral Kethzar," she said pleasantly. "I hope you're feeling better. Dr. Vasquez tells me you've been eating properly now." "Dr. Chen," Kethzar replied, still not entirely comfortable with how politely he was being treated. "I wanted to thank you for your people's kindness to my crews. Of course. Though I have to ask you something that's been bothering me." Dr. Chen looked genuinely puzzled. "Why did your people think we were weak? I mean, I understand that we don't have traditional militaries like most species, but surely your intelligence services noticed that we live in environments that would be considered uninhabitable by most civilizations?" Kethzar considered the question. It was something he had been thinking about constantly since the defeat of his fleet. "We saw your people as soft because you were kind," he said slowly. "In our experience, kindness equals weakness. Strength comes from the willingness to use force." "That's interesting," Dr. Chen mused. "From our perspective, kindness requires tremendous strength. It's much easier to destroy something than to build it. Much simpler to hurt someone than to help them. The fact that humanity chooses to be gentle doesn't mean we can't be otherwise when necessary." She paused, then continued. "Admiral, did you know that the average human colony ship carries tools capable of cracking open moons? Not as weapons, but as standard mining equipment." We build our homes on worlds where the weather can kill you and the ground is toxic. We take family vacations to see neutron stars and consider black holes to be interesting navigation hazards. Kethzar felt that familiar chill. No. Our intelligence services missed that entirely. Because you were looking for weapons and military installations. You weren't looking at how we actually live. Doctor. Chen shook her head sadly. Admiral. Humanity terraformed 17 dead worlds last year just for fun. We regularly relocate entire star systems when they become unstable. Yesterday, before this whole misunderstanding started, we received a request to help evacuate a civilization whose sun was going nova. It was considered a routine assistance mission. The communication screen showed images of human colonies, human ships, human technology. But now that Kethzar knew what to look for, he could see the truth that had been hidden in plain sight. Every tool was massively overbuilt for its stated purpose. Every ship was designed to survive impossible conditions. Every structure was built to withstand forces that would destroy most military installations. We're not warriors, Admiral, Dr. Chen continued. We're survivors. And after thousands of years of surviving in the most hostile environments imaginable, we've gotten very good at it. Another chime indicated someone at his door. Kethzar opened it to find Dr. Vasquez holding a data pad and looking pleased. Good news, Admiral. We've finished the repairs on your ships. Actually, we finished those yesterday. Today we've been installing some upgrades we thought you might find useful. She handed him the data pad, which showed technical specifications that made his eyes widen. The humans had improved every system on every Kethvar ship. Better weapons, stronger shields, more efficient engines. They had taken his fleet and made it twice as powerful as it had been before the war. Why? He asked. Dr. Vasquez looked surprised by the question. Because we could? And because space travel is dangerous enough without having to worry about equipment failures. But we attacked you. Yes, and that was unfortunate. But your crews are going to have to get home safely. And we'd feel terrible if something happened to them because we didn't fix their ships properly. Kethzar stared at the specifications. The humans had just handed him a military force capable of threatening most civilizations in the galaxy. They were giving it to him freely, without demands or conditions. Dr. Vasquez, he said carefully, what's to stop us from attacking you again? She blinked in surprise, then laughed. Oh. Well. First, you've seen what happens when you actually fight us instead of just annoying our civilian population. But more importantly, she gestured around the rescue ship. Why would you want to? I don't understand. Admiral, your people declared war because you were frustrated with peace, right? Because your warriors had no battles to fight, no challenges to overcome? Kethzar nodded reluctantly. Well, now you've seen what real challenges look like. Building colonies in the hearts of dying stars. Exploring regions of space that would kill you in seconds. Helping civilizations survive natural disasters that could wipe out entire species. Doctor, Vasquez smiled. If your people want adventure and challenge, we could use the help. The universe is full of problems that need solving. She paused at the door. Think about it, Admiral. You could spend the next 1,000 years fighting wars and conquering weaker species. Or you could spend them learning to survive in places where the very atoms are hostile to life. Which one sounds like a worthy challenge for true warriors? After she left, Kethzar sat alone with his thoughts. Outside his viewport, the last of the human work crews were finishing their upgrades to the Kethvar ships. Soon, his fleet would be ready to return home. But the Admiral found himself wondering if home was really where they should be going. The humans had offered them something the Kethvar had been searching for without realizing it. A true test of strength. A real challenge worthy of warriors. Fighting against nature itself. Surviving in impossible conditions. Solving problems that could save entire civilizations. That was a battle worth fighting. A new communication came in from the Kethvar homeworld. High Command wanted a full report on the military capabilities they had observed, and recommendations for future action against humanity. Kethzar looked at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. Instead, he composed a different message. This one addressed to Dr. Vasquez. Dr. Vasquez, he typed. My people have been warriors for 1,000 generations. But perhaps we have been fighting the wrong battles. If the offer stands, the Kethvar Empire would like to learn about these real challenges you mentioned. He paused, then added, and thank you for everything. As he sent the message, Admiral Kethzar realized that the war had ended exactly as it began, with humanity offering help to anyone who needed it. The difference was that now, finally, he was wise enough to accept it. Outside his viewport, human ships continued their eternal work of making the impossible seem routine. And for the first time in his life, Kethzar understood what true strength looked like. It looked like kindness backed by the power to reshape worlds. It looked like humanity,